Welcome, everyone. I am your moderator. My name is Andy Borans. I'm the executive director of the Alpha Epsilon Pi fraternity, the Jewish fraternity. Thank you. It is a pleasure to be here tonight and be your moderator. I understand that they truly wanted Oprah to be in this position, but she was not available, so I was the second choice. But I'll try and do my best. It is a pleasure to introduce our panel, and first I'm going to start over here. A consummate professional, friend, brother, and we are thrilled to have him in this position. President and CEO of Hillel International, Eric Fingerhut. Student activist from Binghamton University and commentator, Justin Hayet. Zionist student activist, journalist from the University of New Orleans, Chloe Valdarian. And finally, another student activist, another brother, from Binghamton University, Daniel Mail.
Brandeis.
Oh, Brandeis. I'm sorry. Brandeis.
Together.
Okay, first we're going to have Eric.
Thank you, Andy, and thanks for inviting me for this important event this evening. So I'm the product of the American dream. My grandparents were immigrants. My parents are first-generation Americans. My father graduated high school and went to the U.S. Army. My mother graduated high school and went to work. Though neither of my parents went to college, they had no doubt that my sisters and I would. My father passed away when I was 15, and my mother could not pay for college, so the leaders of this country and the leaders and supporters of this country's colleges and universities made sure that I could go through scholarships, grants, and student loans. In the course of my career, I've been privileged to participate in the great enterprise of higher education as Chancellor of the University System of Ohio. Now, my story is also the story of the American Jewish community. From the immigrants who came through Ellis Island to every generation that preceded and followed them, American Jews have built a golden age of Jewish life and learning. Thanks to the United States of America, the freest and most open society in the history of the world, and to the development of a remarkable system of higher education, we have educated our children and we have prospered. American higher education is truly exceptional. You cannot drive through a city or down a rural highway in America without coming across great research universities and liberal arts colleges funded by public and private dollars of all kinds. This system of higher education has been a great gift to the Jewish community in America. And we have repaid this great gift with an ardor that is amazing to behold. Visit any college campus and look at the names on the buildings. And I don't just mean on the Hillel building or on the Chabad house. Look at the names on the library, the classroom buildings, the research labs, the performing arts centers, the endowed professorships, and the specialized institutes. And more important, we American Jews send our best and brightest to these institutions. While there are excellent Jewish colleges and universities, for the most part, the Jewish community in America has not followed the model of other religious groups and built separate schools where our young people can be educated in an atmosphere infused with our own approach to faith and society. Rather, we prepare our children to apply to the most competitive and diverse institutions of higher education in the world. And once there, we encourage them to take the widest range of courses and expose themselves to the broadest set of ideas possible. That is why it pains me so greatly to be here today, but also why it is absolutely necessary that I stand before you tonight. As president of the oldest and largest Jewish student organization on campus in the world, an organization that began at the University of Illinois 91 years ago and now serves more than 550 colleges and universities in the United States and Canada, as well as students in 17 other countries on 5 continents, it is my duty to raise the alarm about a growing anti-Semitism on campus. Let me be clear. It is not on every campus, but it is prevalent enough that this subject must be seriously addressed. It's not difficult to explain where this new anti-Semitism comes from. As we saw in the streets of Europe this past summer, protests that claim to be targeted at the policies of the government of Israel are frequently used as a cover for virulent anti-Semitism. Here on American campuses and in our communities, there are certainly some people who are misled into thinking they are simply attending a political protest. However, those who are organizing the protests know precisely what they are doing. And there should be no doubt as to why these same people and organizations target college campuses. When an issue is framed as a political debate, it immediately assumes a place of special protection on our campuses. As we know from the experience on campus, with issues of sexual harassment, racial preferences, and many other examples, what is claimed as political debate can quickly put students in situations where they feel unsafe both physically and psychologically, and where they feel unable to develop their own views and identity in a free and open educational environment. When this happens, the very basis of the university experience that we so love and support is threatened. And friends, that threat is real. All leaders of higher education must understand that the abuse of verbal and physical tactics of those who seek to attack Israel on campuses has indeed crossed the line. And I call on those leaders who are responsible for the climate of our campuses to re-examine rules and policies that excuse the behaviors contributing to a resurgence of anti-Semitism and that are making students feel that their faith and identity is threatening on the very campuses that should be threatened on the very campuses that should be nurturing and protecting them. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. What we're going to do now is we're going to have each one of our undergraduate student activists talk for 2 to 3 minutes about their campus goings-on, your role as a Israel leader, representing Israel on campus, and just a little bit about yourselves. So we'll start with Daniel.
So my name is Daniel Mail. I am from Newton, Massachusetts. I actually started at Washington University in St. Louis with the intent purpose on running away from everything Jewish in Israel. So I'm sitting here, so I failed. And it was a very interesting case. I actually went on Birthright Israel halfway through my sophomore year. And round of applause for Birthright. So Birthright often tells you about the students go and they go before the Western Wall and then they'll fall in love with Israel. And I'm a living testimony that's true. So I returned to WashU and I really wanted to get involved. And I immediately entered the Israel scene there, and I realized that it was a great school, but I was looking for something else. And I transferred to Brandeis. At Brandeis, I was thrust right into the middle of things there. There were a number, highly political campus, so that really consumed a lot of my time. And I also began working as a student journalist, and I began covering other campuses. So a number of these stories that were featured in the film, I actually have talked to a number of those students. And it became very clear to me that, as Mr. Finger had outlined, there is a growing problem. And that really has pushed me forth and compelled me to really get involved. And I think one of the biggest takeaways from me is that Israel's values and our ability to apply democracy and freedom that we see here in American Israel really transcends just the Israel question on campus. And we've been able to, and I've been able to hopefully enter into other subjects as well. And at Brandeis, I think one of the most interesting things for me, there's also talk about some of the professors. And there was one incident where a professor was on a closed faculty listserv distributing anti-Semitic materials. He was accusing Israel of harvesting Palestinian organs and actually compared the president to Hitler. So in the memory of the Brandeis' namesake, Judge Louis Brandeis, sunlight is the best disinfectant. So as a journalist, I brought attention to that. And that was a really telling case for me. The president of my university actually condemned his rhetoric, and I thought that the campus ultimately benefited from a degree of moral clarity that President Lawrence was able to offer.
Indeed, you did a wonderful job exposing that. Thank you. Chloe? Oh.
In the words of the late, great Jabotinsky, we hold that Zionism is moral and just. And since it is moral and just, justice must be done. And indeed, I concur with that sentiment. And so my name is Chloe Valdery, and I am a Zionist. The way in which I became a Zionist is atypical. I am not Jewish. I grew up in a Christian home, but I grew up in a Christian home that observed the Shabbat and Sukkot and kept kosher style. So my identity is inextricably linked to the Jewish people's identity, and by extension, it is inextricably linked to Jewish self-determination. So Zionism was sort of inevitable coming to that political position. And I got involved initially when I was a freshman at the University of New Orleans. I was majoring in film, but a lot of things began to happen in the world at large. There was a lot of talk about Iran. There was the Fogel family massacre that had occurred. There was a shooting in Toulouse, France, and anti-Semitism was rising exponentially in Europe in general, but especially in France. And so I changed majors sophomore year. I switched from film to international studies, and I created an organization called Allies of Israel on my campus. And as a result, I've been doing activism on my campus since then. I'm also a consultant for the Committee for Accuracy in Middle East Reporting in America, CAMERA, which you all should support. But as an activist and as a consultant for CAMERA, I basically promote campaigns on social media, on Facebook and on Twitter, but also on college campuses in general, that cultivate Jewish identity and cultivate the importance of Zionism and putting back the Zionist element into the equation, into activism, into pro-Israel activism in general, trying to work against, Zionism is to a large extent a dirty word on some college campuses. So one of the things I do is try to fight against that through combining ethics with aesthetics through different campaigns on social media.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, Justin.
My name's Justin Hayat. My story starts on the beaches of Ashkelon in southern Israel, 9 miles from the Gaza border. I met people, Israelis, who were just like me. And at that time, I think it was 2010 or 11, there wasn't an Iron Dome protecting them. There was nothing I could do to protect them, I thought. And I went to campus, and I saw, on the other side of a protest, I saw everything I was what those people were standing against. And everything I wanted to be was everything they were standing against. And I started to think, what can I do? What can we do? And so I got involved with the Committee for Accuracy in Middle Eastern Reporting in America, CAMERA, as a fellow. We did events, we mobilized, we had hundreds of people at our events. We held one of the most successful events in CAMERA's history with Dr. Anat Berko, which got over 120 students amidst this storm of anti-Semitism and anti-Israel rage, and we were able to educate people. I then began writing for the Jerusalem Post. I was then attacked for writing, not physically, thank God, attacked for writing for the Jerusalem Post and called by a paid member of my school's faculty a genocidal terrorist maniac, which wasn't the greatest thing in the world. And things started moving, and I started to see a world that wasn't defending Israel, didn't care about Israel and the people that I loved in southern Israel. And I decided to act, and I was so honored to be in this film with so many other great voices. And now I am working for Masa Israel Journey, one of the most incredible organizations. I help to recruit students to go to Israel and kind of light that spark. And you people like us on this stage, we have a flaming spark for Israel and for Zionism. And we also have to remember that we have to ignite a spark within people who might not feel totally engaged or might have questions, because I truly believe that if we show them the true Israel, if we let them interact with Israel, we will create a bright future for all of us. And I know I speak for the three of us when I say that, we've just begun with this, and it's the greatest honor to defend the state of Israel.
And I will certify that Justin is not a maniac by any means. So this is the process now where we have a couple of questions that I'm going to ask the panel, and a little more specific, and ask them to give us 2 minutes on each. And then within the aisles, I understand people are going around with pencils and paper and asking you to write your own questions that are going to get fed up here. So If you see someone in the aisle or you want to wave them over to you, please do that. So in the meantime, Daniel, we're going to start with you. Please share with us a personal story or incident that you experienced when someone, quote, crossed the line, and how you tackled it.
So again, at Brandeis, I think I'll go back to that example of the professor, in that there were a couple of us that were really concerned about this when I obtained these emails, and we went about exposing that. But I think one of the things from the film it's an important takeaway is the globalization of the pro-Israel movement. So when you say an anti-Semitic incident that I endured, thank God at Brandeis, it really is not like that. But through my connections and friends at other schools, I feel like I've personally been with them and experienced some of the hatred and vitriol that they've had to endure. And one of the scariest incidents for me, actually, was at the beginning of this past year at Temple University when a student was punched in the face, actually an API brother. And I spoke with him over the phone from the hospital. And we brought a lot of attention to that incident, and it got national media attention. It was on Drudge, and the school actually was very proactive, and I think that it was a very important lesson in that if we are proactive about these incidents, and if we do take a stand and say we will not tolerate this. Hillel was very involved, other groups, Camera, Stand With Us, speakers were brought to campus, and I thought it was a very powerful anecdote to the collective effort of the pro-Israel movement that when we do take a stand, that our voices will be heard and that blatant anti-Semitism will not be tolerated.
Great. This year has been, just a little commentary here, this particular year we've had directed at API representing Israel 12 incidents, 3 of which were violent, very violent. So it's real out there. Chloe, same question.
So at Tulane University last year, a couple of friends and I got word that an anti-Israel group was coming to give a lecture. And obviously we were very upset about this because we had watched one of their videos on YouTube and we knew what they were going to say in advance, and they were spewing a lot of anti-Semitism and just falsehoods and rhetoric about the Jewish state. So we decided to do something different in terms of our approach. We decided to engage in a type of direct action. So what we did is we created signs that said inaccurate or wrong or incorrect on them. We made these 3 different signs, and we actually went to the event and sat in the audience, and every time one of the speakers would say something that was totally wrong, we would hold up these signs that said inaccurate or incorrect. And in the process, I think that a couple things happened. Number one, the speakers were definitely thrown off because they were rehearsed. You could tell that they were rehearsed, and they didn't expect this, and they had never encountered anything like this. But also, I think the most important aspect of it was that the people in the audience who knew nothing about the topic actually started questioning what they were hearing. Just because we decided to show up and challenge the speakers, they had an official platform, and here we are in the audience challenging them. But because we challenged them, the people in the audience, a lot of them were saying, I don't think that what I'm hearing is completely true. And this is important because on our way to the event, I can speak of myself personally, I felt a little scared. Like when you go to an event and you're in the audience and you're thinking about challenging a speaker who has an official platform to spew anti-Semitism, it's nerve-wracking. I remember my heart was actually beating very fast just on the way to the event. But once we got there, and the very first time we held up that sign, after that, it was the easiest thing to do. And I think there's a lesson here in that it takes that first step in challenging, bigotry, that first step in challenging racism, and after that, it gets easier, and you become more empowered to continue to do the same.
Oh, good for you. True activism. True activism. I love that. Justin.
So my mother is distantly related to Chaim Nachum Bialik, one of the great poets, Zionist poets. And so around a year ago, for the first time in my life, I was published in the Jerusalem Post, a really historic paper in Israel and throughout the world. And it was one of the proudest moments of my life. And then I get an email from the school newspaper editor. You have been charged with plagiarism, take this piece down immediately or face student conduct, all that garbage. And they were alleging that I had taken stuff that I had previously written for the school newspaper and changed the context and changed it up a bit and put it in the Jerusalem Post, and they said that was self-plagiarism. And I later learned that it was I'm so good. If I'm going to plagiarize someone, I'm not plagiarizing myself. What I later realized and was later told that Students for Justice in Palestine went after the newspaper and the opinions editor, which was a Jewish guy who was also a Zionist, and they wanted to put Jew against Jew because they don't like that we have a voice and that we have the facts and that we have the right to speak up for the state that we believe in and we love so much. And then, to get nasty emails from TAs who affect how students think and what they think. And TAs usually teach, the introductory courses, so it's freshmen. And many of my friends who are a year or two younger had this TA who called me that, I don't even remember what it was, maniac, genocidal maniac, whatever. And so everyone in this audience, for the most part, you all know who you are. Imagine being a student walking into a college classroom, not knowing who you are, but wanting to find it, and being seen and seeing that Israel's not even on the map. You can't argue with a map. Maps are taken as fact. And so, for me, he crossed the line not because he doesn't have the right to say what he thinks, even though what he thinks is totally deluded and totally not factual, but he doesn't have the right to go after me and the opinions editor because we're Jews who believe in the right to the Jewish state, and if you don't believe in the right to the Jewish state, you're inherently anti-Semitic.
Wow. And a nice Menschy boy to endure all of that. Eric.
Well, obviously, I speak for the students, not for myself personally in terms of crossing the line. But, the film covered the Ohio University story pretty thoroughly. But as the former chancellor of the University System of Ohio, I have to say that of which Ohio University was a part, I have to say that I feel very personally that the university has still not dealt with that situation as it properly should. Indeed, the charges against the students just this week were increased and remain pending. And the point that I'd like to make is that these are supposed to be educational institutions, and what we know is that there was actually a professor at Ohio University who coached the student senate president who abused the ALS ice bucket challenge, encouraged her use of the BDS, probably filmed the video in his backyard for all that we know, is in the scene that you saw at the Student Senate screaming at the Jewish students, tweeted that Hillel is racist and all the Jewish students on campus. So when this was brought to the attention of the university, and we said, you must speak out against this this professor. Well, no, we can't say anything. He's got tenure and it's protected speech. He said, I'm not asking you to fire him. We're asking you to be clear that this is an educational institution and this is not the way educators behave. And even at that scene that you saw in the film of the student senate meeting, even student government, I say to my student friends on the panel, is part of the educational experience. Where were the educators to step in and to calm that situation down and to explain to students and talk with students about the right way they should have handled it and what the student senate president should have said and should have done, instead of calling the police and turning it into a legal matter? So the disappointment for me that the university crossed the line in not understanding what its educational role is and what this experience was doing to all Jewish students on campus, and frankly, that they still have not yet adequately responded to that situation.
That's correct. Very nice. Thank you. What we're going to do now is we're going to do 1 minute really quickly. Okay. Please start questions. We need to end by 9:04. Okay. All right. I'll do what I'm told. Okay. Should non- or anti-Zionist votes be allowed on campus? Are they legitimate? Should SJP be banned? Okay, Daniel, we'll get your response really quickly.
I'm a near absolutist on the First Amendment, especially on campus. If anyone followed what happened with Ion Herseli at Brandeis, I think that blocking and trying to stunt intellectual pursuit and growth is an intellectual disease, quite frankly. I think that when SJP blatantly violates school regulation, then there's a problem. But in terms of them having space on campus, I think we absolutely have to encourage it. We need more debate, not less. And that is, I think, the greatest value of Israel and the greatest value of the United States.
Great. Okay, I'm going to give this one to Eric. How would you suggest, as parents, we educate high school students on how to combat anti-Semitism?
Well, I think that we have to begin with understanding that, and this is, of course, Hillel's mission is to build an enduring commitment to Jewish life, learning in Israel. We have to understand that our love of Israel, our sense of the importance of Zionism comes from our Jewish identity. And so we first have to make sure that we're nurturing a strong and compelling Jewish identity. And then also make sure that our young people understand that the love of Israel is something that has throughout history animated the Jewish people, but also has throughout history generated debate and controversy, and it's something that they need to be prepared to understand and to stand strong based on their Jewish identity and their love of Israel.
Great. Chloe, you talked before about that group that came that was well rehearsed. This is a good question for you. How do we fight against groups that are obviously so well funded and prepared before they even come to campus to start their rabble-rousing?
I think it takes an understanding and an awareness of just the fact that, like, knowing that we are engaged in a struggle, and the way you give expression to a struggle is not necessarily the way you would approach other events. For example, the way in which SJP frames their narrative, and other organizations like SJP, is a narrative of anti-colonialism, is a narrative of, the underdog. And so I think if you are able to, first of all, understand what they're going to say and know what they're going to say beforehand, and there are plenty of videos and plenty of interactions that have been recorded in the media that can give you a good idea of their arguments. So you become aware of them, and then you become aware of their tactics. And you become aware of why their tactics are so effective, again, within the framework of this concept of struggle. And I think that ultimately, once you become aware of this, you can train yourself to be able to respond, oftentimes in like turn. So for example, what we did at Tulane University is actually something that they would do, and something like something that they would have done. They haven't exactly put up signs, but they have sort of expressed their protests in other ways. And that type of protest is very actually emblematic of the civil rights movement. Those tactics are not originally theirs. So I think if you learn those types of approaches, then you turn the tables on them, then you sort of flip the paradigm. Because now you're situating yourself as the victim of what they're doing, which is sort of what kind of happened at UCLA recently with some images that showed up basically calling out SJP for what they were doing on campus for being anti-Semitic. So I think, number one, an awareness of what they do and what they say. Number two, an awareness of their tactics and understanding that it comes from a type of direct action, a type of sort of civil disobedience type approach, and adopting those same tactics in a way that get your point across and that illustrate that what they say, they have the freedom to say it, but you're still going to voice your protest when they say it.
Excellent, excellent. Very nice. All right, Justin, how can we reconfigure our contemporary Judaism, or should we, so that it provides a meaningful and attractive basis for our identity?
Yeah, I think there's two parts to this conversation. One is forming the identity, and the other is forming people who are connected to Israel. Because I truly believe that if you're rooted in Jewish values, Jewish history, culture, and tradition, there will be a link to Israel somewhere within there, and everyone's will be different. The connection, Jewish identity is this imperfect thing where everyone's is so different and so unique. I was the kid who was kicked out of Hebrew school like 7 times. And I'm still here, so anyone can, can support Israel in their own way. And I think that as someone who will hopefully lead many trips to Israel in my lifetime, hopefully this summer, I think if you let people interact with Israel, truly, let them go through the market, let them go walk the streets of Tel Aviv, of Jerusalem, and let them interact and see Israel and Israelis and their culture and their food, and then their food again, I really think that it will happen. And I'm a part of an organization called Messiah Israel Journey, and I remember the director of the New York office, he's on a committee with all these Israelis, and they're like, how can we make sure that the Americans love Israel? And he says to them, stop. Let it happen. It'll happen. That's why Birthright has been a tremendous success shaping the Jewish future. Not to say that they don't have their challenges. They do. Every organization does. But it's that key of encouraging the fact that Jews can have different and unique identities, and that we should embrace that. And not everyone's goal should be to be Chloe or Justin or Daniel, but to make sure that every Jew has the ability to connect to Judaism and connect to Israel in a way that's meaningful to them. And that's the goal.
Very nice. When I said you were a Menschy kid, I didn't know you were kicked out of Hebrew school 7 times. Daniel, this is right up here. Is there anything in the BDS movement that's legitimate?
I think that the impetus, ideally, for the BDS movement and sense of concern for innocent Arabs or innocent Palestinians, if we take them at their word, that's actually, we desperately need that. I think that, but that's as far as it goes, because that's not what they actually care about. They care about demonizing the state of Israel, demonizing the Jewish state, Jews, the behavior of Jews. They kind of have this Israel centrism where everything is dependent on Jews. And I think that when it comes to campus, we need to be very, very clear. There's nothing pro-Palestinian, there's nothing pro-Palestine about any of these actors. They're simply anti-Israel. There's make no mistake of it. And that's something that we cannot concede that point. We cannot concede that point. It's very funny, all of their groups, Jewish Voice for Peace or Students for Justice in Palestine, the only people that are actually standing for Palestinians or the rights of minorities in the Middle East are the people that are defending Israel and standing for Israel. So I think the movie makes clear that the Jewish and the pro-Israel community are standing there ready, willing partners to actually help build a better future. And let's hope that we can find reciprocal support on the other side.
Great. All right, Chloe, the SJP and the Students for Justice in Palestine in large part seems to be larger than life due to their unified message. And they have our unified message. How do we as a Jewish community learn from that? And this question says very clearly, I'm tired of playing defense.
Absolutely.
So
whoever asked that question, I agree with you. So it's interesting. One of the campaigns I devised for Camera it's a campaign called Zionism First. And you can visit cameraoncampus.org, and it's basically an ad campaign. And it's a bunch of photos that have cool taglines, like one we released, like basically taunting SJP, singing "Bring It On." Another one was a couple of students with Israeli flags on their backs, and they were going to go protest something, and then the tagline was "Find Your Courage." And the philosophy behind Zionism First is as follows. We ask for Zionism first, not for discussion of Arab-Israeli conflicts, not for discourse of legal texts, not for psychoanalyzing the dead, not for stifling the breath of a people, not for justifying murder, not for the demise of the UN, not for the permission or lack thereof of the US, not for the scorn of the EU, not for demise nor for analyzing demise, not for depression nor for evaluating depression. We ask for the celebration of a civilization, of a legacy, of life itself, of Mendelssohn and of Maimonides, of Einstein and Heschel, of invention and philosophy, of Herzl and Hess, of Mandelstam and Goldstein, of Mail and Mazig, of art, of debate, of collective belonging and of individuality, of milk and honey, of prayer of spirituality and rationality, of life itself. To this we raise monuments. To this we give a toast. To this we dedicate ourselves. This is first. We start here, and only here, with laughter and devotion, with ideas that moved and shaped the world, and the people that invented them. We ask first for Zionism.
Wow. I'm done, right? Okay. I've been asked to wrap up, but I'm gonna just ask one more thing. And I'm going to ask Eric. The movie is horrifying and shocking. Why end on a disturbing note? Can we leave with an upbeat message?
Of course we can leave with an upbeat message. The Israel on Campus Coalition surveys the anti-Israel activities on campus and pro-Israel activities on campus. And this fall, after the Gaza war, which we knew would create new impetus on campus, they saw I think, Daniel, was a 40% increase? 46% increase in anti-Israel activity on campus. But they saw an even larger increase in pro-Israel activity on campus. And to the, slightly to the previous question, if I get asked one thing over and over again, it's we have lots of Jewish organizations and pro-Israel organizations that care about this issue. Are we all off on our own doing our own thing, or are we working together? And so maybe the way to end is to say this: we are certainly confronting new situations. We're certainly not yet winning every day, there's no question. But we are learning every day, and we are working closer together every day, and we will win this fight on campuses.
I'd like to thank the audience for your great questions, and of course, Daniel, Chloe, Justin, and Eric. Thank you very much. It was great.